Well, speaking of a hot crowd, the main event was up and they were ready for this. And you could tell that, I mean, the people knew what was going on. They'd seen the video earlier in the night, but you could tell that they had heard the news. They knew what was happening. They knew who the Briscoes were. So the people that were there were obviously up on this situation. And again, give Tony Khan all the credit in the world. He brought in Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman to do the color, along with Sockface, who didn't have the courtesy to bow out and let them do it. He brought Bobby Cruz in to do the ring announcing. I know that meant a lot to Bobby Cruz. And this is the time where, okay, yes, Jay Lethal is a heel now, but this is the time you can let that go. And I'll be the one to say that. And that's what they did. They had Sanjay come out halfway down the aisle with Lethal and then hug him and go back because they weren't going to be doing any distraction spots or whatever. And you could tell from the start, Jay was about ready to cry by the time he got in the ring. And it was the same thing when Mark had come out, who got a huge pop as soon as, reach for the sky, boys. The people popped and Mark came out and milked it, and the fans were into it, the in-ring intros, and Bobby Cruz gave it the big fight kind of feel. Their new producer has upgraded the TV look, the better lighting, better color. The in-ring handhelds on the intros, the jib shots made the crowd look big. There's an upper deck in Rupp Arena that's bleachers. It's not even seats, and that's how they get so many people in there. And they tarped that off, and the way that they set the building up and shot it this time. Remember, I said here a few months ago, AEW sometimes has people, but you can't see them. Well, the jib shots and the flyovers, you couldn't see any empty seats, but it looked like a big crowd. So the match, everything was hitting on all cylinders here. And then they had the match, and both these guys can work. And Mark, not only, I talk all the time about a guy like Johnny Gargano, because he can do all the moves impeccably, and he looks like Ned, and he's got no size and no facial and no personality. Mark Briscoe's guy, he can do all these moves, but also he's got the face, he's got the personality, he works the redneck kung fu. He's so natural. It's not good. It's goofy in a real and good way coming from Mark because it's him. It's not just foolishness. And these guys, they did all their stuff. They did a chop trade, but they made it work because it wasn't like, here, now you hit me now. And they were firing at each other. All their work looks good. They're so experienced. They fed each other so easily. Each one of them was in the right place at the right time for whatever was coming up. The match made sense. And then Mark, as it goes on, starts trying for the Jay Driller, the double arm pile driver in honor of Jay. And Jay Briscoe had beaten Jay Lethal for the Ring of Honor World title with that move. When Jay hit the lethal injection, Mark rolls to the floor, so he can't be pinned. Jay has to go out and get on him, and they have a fight on the floor for the first time in the match. It was late in the match at that point. And again, I'm not critiquing the whole match back and forth because it was beautiful. And I can give you a play-by-play, but there was nothing wrong with it. So just go watch it somewhere. But finally, when they get to fighting on the floor for the first time in the match, going home, Jay puts Mark on the table and tries to go to the top, but Mark knocked him off to the floor and then came off the apron, hit him a blockbuster on. I don't know how Mark has continued for all these years to take those bumps like that and still be as in good a shape as he's in. But he hits the blockbuster off the apron, which was first real big, hard floor bump, then puts Lethal on the table, goes to the top rope, and gives him the froggy bow. And it was beautiful. He couldn't have hit it any better in a better place, exactly on the table and next to his opponent for perfection. And both of them sold it like they were just out. And the fans chanted, holy shit. And that was the big fucking bump. And that's what they wanted to see. And then Mark rolls Jay in, covers him, gets a 2 count. There's a pop again. Mark goes for the Jay Driller. Jay gets out of it. Mark ends up hitting 2 big clotheslines. Boom, boom. And then the Jay Driller. That's the other thing they wanted to see. 1, 2, 3. And did you hear what you don't hear a lot anymore, especially because as we talked about these modern finishes coming out of nowhere or these tap outs after they've been in a stationary hold for 45 seconds? It's always better when you're building a finish that you can make people anticipate, will we get it? Will we not? Will we get it? Will we not? And then when it gets hit, the people counted along with the 1, 2, 3, along with the referee. They knew that was the finish. They knew they weren't going to get swerved or screwed because that's what it had to be. And some other people, some other place may have thought that and said, well, so we'll swerve them, we'll fool them. If he had kicked out of that Jay Driller, I don't care if Mark had immediately then small packaged him or tapped him out or whatever, it would have killed the whole goddamn match. That was the point. That's what they built to, and that's what the people wanted to see. And a lot of times in wrestling, you have to be smart enough to give the people what they want to see, even if everybody knows that's what's going to happen. I think ahead to Cody Rhodes' Royal Rumble, but I will back up to this match. It was perfect. What a pop. The move got a pop. They counted with the 3 count of the referee, and the pin got a pop. And again, Jay was crying, and Mark got down and spoke to Jay's kids and to Jay himself into the floor camera. You could hear it picked up on the microphone, and then hugged Lethal. All the talent came to the stage. The fans were standing up. You know,
the last image on the show was Mark Briscoe on the stage with a big image of his brother behind him.
Yes, on the screen, the big Jay Briscoe graphic with Mark behind him and all the talent applauding for him and the people. And we hear now that Mark will be back in AEW, and goddamn good thing, too. But it was a great moment. What could have made it better? It could have been a little longer. There could have been more of it. I don't know that anything else could have made it any better. And at least now, you know, that the world didn't come to an end. And, you know, because Briscoe was on this television network, we will see him more. And can you imagine? We've talked about, well, they dropped the ball with Brian Pillman Jr. after the Dark Side of the Ring episode on his dad. That is true, but it was also minor. It could have been a step up for Brian Pillman Jr., but not instantly catapult himself into, you know, the main event situation. Can you imagine not only a babyface that the fans would like to cheer for more, but a brand new talent that they could bring in as a babyface that would be able to work at a higher level against more of the different people on this roster than Mark Briscoe right now, as well as the natural element of this guy, if they act quickly and smartly, could very well be in the next month the most popular motherfucker on the roster.
Yeah, I think it could be somewhat similar to like when Eddie Guerrero went to ECW. You know, we didn't know what to expect. He was on his own for the first time in the States, really, that anyone had seen. You know, he'd been part of a pretty notorious tag team just months earlier. And he classed up the place, and it was a nice thing to drop in the middle of that division. It's going to be interesting watching Mark on his own going forward. But I kind of had the same thought you did. If they use this guy right, and with AEW, that always is something you have to say, because things happen. He could be the biggest babyface in that company. And he's so unique. I mean, just the noises he was making during his match. No one else on that show makes any noise except if it's to say, you know, what the move is. They call their spots louder than they make any noises or grunts. I couldn't critique this match in any fair way. I didn't watch it the way I watch a normal match. I was just smiling. I was happy about it. And I think AEW did a fantastic job fighting for the Briscoes, helping the Briscoes, and at the end of the day, getting Mark on this show, knowing Mark will be there going forward, and knowing that the last image on this episode, after all the drama, was Mark Briscoe with all the wrestlers wearing shirts honoring his brother and a big image on the screen of his brother. That was the final image of this episode. It was perfect.
And again, if I was Tony Khan, they signed the Briscoes to whatever they signed them for Ring of Honor because they couldn't be in AEW. I would immediately renegotiate that with Mark Briscoe for 3 years and say, Mark, and because he's talked about wanting to take care of the family. Well, let him work for it, but pay him what he's going to be worth. And I say that Mark Briscoe, if used properly with his talent, can be one of the 2 or 3 most popular wrestlers on Tony Khan's roster for the next couple of years. And not just because of the accident with Jay. That may have been the catalyst to get Mark on this television program to begin with, but now due to his own attributes, they're already predisposed to like him because of what's happened. And if he gets to show what he can do, you can't help but like this motherfucker. And he gets over. So I would give him a singles contract, and I would start thinking about him in that position if I was Tony as quickly as I could, because you got to capitalize and keep it going.